try not to be too stressed. Just take a breath in between and ask yourself, how big is this dilemma? Is it really that bad?
This is the Creative Voyage podcast, a long-form interview show with the mission to help creative professionals level up. I'm your host, Mario De Picolzuane. I'm a creative professional myself, active in the fields of graphic design, art direction, and creative consulting, working with companies such as Kinfolk, Menu, and Sonos. Through season 1 of this podcast, I present in-depth interviews with some of the world's most inspiring creative professionals, revealing the stories that shape their lives and careers, plus actionable strategies to help you take your mindset and skills to the next level. I invite you to join me on this journey. In this episode, I talk to a textile designer.
I'm Nadine Goepfert. I'm based in Berlin. I work as a multidisciplinary designer on commission jobs, offering creative direction, design, consultancy on textiles and materials. I work in various fields like for interior, product, art, and also fashion. At the same time, I teach and I work on self-initiated projects.
Nadine has worked for clients such as Adidas, Clark, Warp Records, Faye Toogood, and Solange, just to name a few. Through her practice, she investigates contemporary culture to create intelligent concepts and material innovations. Her internationally exhibited collections, research projects, and art installations question the relation between garments, individual, and society to reveal unconscious patterns of behavior in the everyday use of textiles. And that's why, besides finding her work beautiful, I find it conceptually intriguing and truly inspirational. In this episode, we're going to listen to the highlights of the conversation I had with Nadine in September of 2018. We cover topics such as the importance of listening to our artistic intuition, Nadine's work routines, her approach to personal and research-based projects, how to deal with obstacles, and much more. The early lessons are usually hard-earned and extremely valuable, so looking through that lens, I've asked Nadine to share her advice to young professionals.
Well, generally, I think the most important thing is when you work like in creative field or in design is to be really motivated and enthusiastic about what you do. Already during my studies, I studied with a lot of people that always had like better or other things to do than really studying. And I was just like the happiest person ever that I got into these studies because it was like my big dream to do that.
Yeah. But then is there anything specific that you think maybe you did wrongly or something that you kind of like missed because you were just young and inexperienced and naive?
Yeah, what I definitely missed in my studies was that I think that I didn't get enough into the technical parts of textile design. And I think nowadays especially in textile and fashion, it's more and more important that you also know a lot of things about the craft itself. And of course, there are still like some companies that do all that, but at the same time, I think it's a very good combination if you do both. And we had all this technical part. We had it pretty much in the beginning of our studies. And it was like this time where I don't know, you come out of school and you just want to be like creative and think about concepts and stuff like that. And I missed a bit out on that. So I really had to do that afterwards again, like to teach myself all these things.
Inspiration can be a peculiar thing. Some of us have it in abundance, some of us struggle to channel it. On top of that, due to the ease of use of social media, we all get fed similar cultural artifacts, which can negatively homogenize our ideas. Besides approaching her work conceptually and rooted in research, Nadine also seems to go a step further and incorporate her intuition into the creative process. Here she expands on that.
We all get these influences, all these pictures and everything and inspiration from everywhere. So sometimes I have the feeling that we forget a bit to stick to or to listen to our own artistic intuition. well, in my work at least, I always try to combine research and observation, which is mostly like the starting point of my work. But at one point, so it doesn't get like too theoretic and too dry, more or less, then I would just, listen to my intuition and make decisions like really spontaneously also.
Yeah. But how do you cultivate that? Is that something that comes naturally for you?
Yeah, for me, it comes naturally. That I would say, it can be quite expressive with ideas and things like that. That I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that now. But I think it's just like how I am, like really naturally. I think it's more something that I found out about my way of working, that this is a kind of structure that I follow. And I also decided at one point to bring that into my classes. And so in the beginning, I always do like a lot of research with the students. And the moment they get bored of that, I just say like, hey, today I brought like tons of materials and we just make things. Just what you have in mind now, just make it, because I'm really convinced that it is really important also to work with your hand to get ideas.
Yeah.
And I think, in German we have this word begreifen, which means greifen means to touch something or to grab something, and begreifen actually means that you understand something. So it's actually the same word.
Does it mean understanding through touch?
Yeah.
That's a good word. German has like so many like of those types of words.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Wilhelm Flusser, he wrote a book called Gestures, and he also wrote about that word actually.
If we are professionals, our routines matter. As Charles Dickens said, I could have never done what I've done without the habits of punctuality, order, and diligence, without the determination to concentrate on one subject at a time. Of course, there's no right or wrong way on how to approach our business, but I believe it's useful to get a glimpse into how other creatives are working. So I've asked Nadine to share her work habits with me.
I would say I have a very contradictory feeling about routines, because on the one hand, I really need some kind of structure, but on the other hand, I get easily bored. So I think routine is something that I think about a lot and also that I work on a lot. I think as a freelancer, when you have like the possibility to do that, probably a lot of freelancers think about that. So I often ask myself questions like, how do I be the most efficient? Do I really need to work like 8 hours a day or maybe only 5? I think especially in our job, time is pretty relative. Like sometimes you can have an idea in 2 minutes and sometimes it takes you a month to come up with something. But I learned a lot about that during a stay at a residency in the countryside for 1 month. And there it was just like, I don't know, I also had to create like another routine because I don't have like this way to work. So I would go for a walk in the morning or take a swim or something like that. And then I would start working at 10. At 1, I would have lunch like with the other residents and we would have lunch for 2 hours or something. And then you get back to work, but then you also only work until like 5 or something. But what I noticed was I was so productive during that time. So it really changed a lot for me. It was also like an important point during that residency is that the internet didn't work that well. And also that it was really abandoned. So you couldn't just go also and get materials or things like that. You really had to work with what was there. And this experience was quite important for me. And after that, I actually also tried to change my own routines a bit. But But yeah, so I'm not really strict about when I start working. It's something between 9 or 10. And in the morning I get up, I make some tea, I do a bit of yoga, I have breakfast. I usually eat something else every day.
Okay.
That's like the breaking out of routine. Then I cycle to the studio, and if I'm early, I would stop by in a cafe and read some newspaper. Yeah, what I do like when I arrive in the studio is actually that I start like with all the emails and all the computer work. So to get this done already in the morning, and usually after that, after I have answered all these emails, I usually, depending on the project, but usually I don't answer emails anymore after 12, because after that I would just start like more focusing on the creative part, and so I don't need to sit in front of the computer anymore for the rest of the day.
Are you trying to be conscious about that work-life balance in general, or how do you approach that? I mean, because it's like so hard to, I think, in a creative profession to have that separation, but I'm curious, how do you then kind of cope with that?
Well, probably one of a few creatives that say that, but when I leave the studio, I don't think about work anymore.
Okay.
No.
That's good. That's really good.
I mean, I still like stay in some kind of open mode. Of course, if I walk down the street and I see something that inspires me, yes, something like that. But usually when I'm done, I'm done. I don't have a problem with that. And also, I mean, I still wonder, it's so hard for me. Before I just said, it took me some time to say like, hey, it makes maybe more sense if you leave the studio now and go for a walk.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe that makes much more sense than staying there and not coming up with anything for the next 2 hours.
Yeah, and I think there seems to be at least anecdotal research and so many just like reportings of that when you work on a specific problem. It's actually good to kind of immerse yourself a lot and like ask yourself all these things and kind of put all these inputs in yourself, but then to actually release and go away from it.
Yeah, exactly.
At least for half an hour or like a day.
Yeah, I mean, it happens to me so often that I work on a project and then, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's also just a simple design or something. And then it's weekend and I do something completely different. Like, don't think about this project at all. But then, I don't know, I'm in the supermarket, I go to, I don't know, I'm outside, and then I'm suddenly like, yeah, that's it, actually.
Each creative field has its challenges. I've asked Nadine to share what she thinks are the main difficulties of being a textile designer working today.
Being a designer at the moment is quite challenging because there are just a lot of designers out there, and there are a lot of good designers out there as well, which is great, I think. So there are also like people that can collaborate together and do things together. But at the same time, of course, it becomes more and more hard to establish as a designer. And yeah, I mean, what's the biggest challenge? I don't know. I think it's important if you want to establish as a designer nowadays that you consider also the need and the relevance of what you do in a wider context. And I always refer to a quote from Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, who said that projects and works of designers, that they should not be seen in isolation, but rather in the relationship with the need of the individual community. So I think, yeah, you can do like a lot of nice things. Yeah, you can do like a lot of nice design, but there is tons of nice design out there and tons of things. And I often ask myself like, yeah, what is it what we actually really need? And what does the society also need? And I think it's really important to ask yourself from time to time, to ask yourself, why is my work actually relevant? Who needs it?
Yeah.
What is it good for? I mean, of course, we are designers and we don't rescue the world, but I think it's important to not add to add to a bunch of things that are just so contemporary that they will end in the trash after a few months, and that's it. And I think, contemporariness and fashion, the aspect of time in fashion, it's quite important. But still, it's not really what I'm interested in. I'm more interested in durable and sustainable things.
Another crucial factor, which can often be a challenge for creative professionals, is making enough money. I've talked to Nadine about how she manages that.
I make my living mostly by the commission jobs that I work on. And these jobs always have priority. The moment I get a commission job in, I work on that. Mm-hmm. And when I don't have a commission, I would always spend these days on my own work. Then I also teach, of course. So that's the other income I have. And yeah, of course, you have to get used to that. You can never be sure when the next commission will come, when you will get the next commission. But I get some kind of confidence regarding that within the past 2 or 3 years. I mean, I work as a freelancer for 5 years. And as I said, the first 2 years I had a side job, which I think is absolutely fine, to do that, because it just takes a while, you know? Yeah. And I cannot say maybe in 2 years or 3 years, I will need a side job again. You never know what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
But for me, I don't know. Now it works really well, and I hope it stays like that.
So you said there's commissions, there's teaching. What kind of commissions do you work on? Is it all in a similar field, or is it quite different?
The nice thing about being a textile designer is that you can work in a lot of different fields. So I actually work in interior, I work in fashion, sometimes I work for artists that are interested in making special materials or things like that, or working with special materials. And so the last commissions I worked on was, for example, for Nike, which was a more commercial job. And then I worked also for Premiere Vision or things like that. These are the bigger jobs. But then I have also smaller things happening. For example, I work for a publishing house where I make drawings for the book covers, and I worked for theater. It's really, really different. It's really various.
And do you think you need that variation also to kind of make it work financially?
Well, I think that's the variation is more something that comes very naturally with what I do. Oh, okay. My studies were called textile and surface design. So what is not a surface? Yeah. Yes, of course. Sometimes there are jobs where I would like to say no, but then you do it because you think it's really well paid. Yeah. Okay. And maybe it takes me 5 more years or 2 more years, I don't know how long, that I can also say no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I don't need to. But up until now, I really like it to work with any kind of clients and collaborators, because when you do that, you also step out of your comfort zone. And most of the time, it's pretty exciting to get all these different influences and make these experiences.
Hey friends, you're listening to the Creative Voyage podcast. We are roughly in the middle of this episode, so it's time for a short break. There's no team behind this show. It's solely produced and edited by me, Mario. I don't have any sponsors, and I have no plans to add any. Nevertheless, I can use all the help I can get growing the show. If you like what you've heard so far, there's 3 simple things you can do for me and future episodes. Number 1, review the show on Apple Podcasts. Number 2, tell a friend and share a link on social media. And number 3, Visit the shop on creative.voyage/shop and support the show by buying bespoke Creative Voyage products. Thanks everyone, let's get back to the show. To develop ourselves and our creative practice, we have to invest our resources into it consciously. The most popular resources being time, money, and attention. I've asked Nadine what she thought was the best investment that she made in herself so far.
I think one of the best investments that I made is the studio that I work in. It's not that it is like expensive or anything. It's just more this idea or the fact that I really like to work like in a nice space and a nice surrounding, because this is where you spend like most of the time and of your day. Like, I mean, it's something between 7 and 10 hours, or I don't know, that you spend in the space where you work. And sometimes when I think about people that sit like in an office every day and surround themselves also maybe with people that they don't like, I think that must be really terrible. And I feel pretty lucky to be in this situation that I can be like with nice people every day and that we have like a nice space and things like that.
So how many people are like in your team?
I work mostly by myself, but with one assistant. And sometimes also only by myself. But I share the studio with LuckyMe studio, which is a graphic design studio. Mm-hmm. The founder is my boyfriend, and there are 5 more people, but they're next door. And I have my own space. For me, it's perfect because I can work really concentrated with my assistant, or if we feel like having more people around, you can just open the door and be with the others and have lunch together and things like that.
I wanted to hear how Nadine is making sure that besides working on client assignments, she also develops as a designer and creative professional. That led us to talk about comfort zones, which according to Roy T. Bennett are the enemies of achievement and a place where our unrealized dreams are buried. He argues that change begins at the end of our comfort zone. That has certainly been true on my journey, and I think with change, there's potential to grow. Here are Nadine's thoughts on that.
I actually also force myself to step out of my comfort zone from time to time. Like even if I work on my self-initiated projects, that, for example, I choose to work with colors that I feel uncomfortable with, or tiny things like that. But I don't get stuck within one aesthetic or one thing that I just can make sure that I would move forward. And also collaborating with people, I think, is really important in that case. Like you can really learn from others. And I think these are like the 2 main things that I do to develop.
Does that come like naturally to you? Or do you kind of have to, do you have like certain like systems? Do you put it like in your like calendar from time to time? You're just kind of trying to be intentional about it. How does that work?
Well, regarding stepping out of my own comfort zone, I would say at one point I noticed, okay, you have been stuck within this aesthetic for 3 months now. Like even if you work like on different jobs, like maybe it's all a bit similar. And then I say like, okay, now it's over. Now you do something else. But all the collaborations, they come more naturally or out of like a feeling that I, for example, meet somebody that I find interesting. And then I say, hey, I would rather work together with you on this code for my next collection than doing it by myself.
At this point in our conversation, I was curious to hear what are some of Nadine's professional challenges and how she deals with them. Here's what she shared with me.
Well, I would say sometimes I feel a bit exhausted, but maybe that's something that a lot of people feel like from time to time, which is probably natural. But as I said, I run my studio all by myself. I do organize like everything. Of course, sometimes I have an assistant, which is a great help, but at the same time, this also requires, again, a lot of organization. Well, apart from that, I don't have much struggle finding ideas. That's the easiest part for me of my work. Sometimes I struggle more within like single projects, with making decisions, making things work, and dealing with these problematics and catastrophes that can happen during production. Like that's more like the complicated things. But other than that, I would say I'm fine. I really enjoy what I do every single day and really never regretted my choice of working as a textile designer. Yeah.
Was there any specific, like maybe some kind of like example when things went bad? Or
well, I just said the other day, I'm so used to disasters.
Okay.
No, because I think it's so normal. Like when does anything go, any project you do like super smooth? To me, it happens all the time, especially when you produce textiles. Then sometimes you work with people in Italy, they don't even speak English and things like that. You have like all these complications all the time and things just go wrong. I became really relaxed about that. I really don't stress out about anything, any of these things anymore because, yeah, it's just normal. It's more a question about how you deal with it. And I would say I just became like very solution orientated. I'm just like, okay, that's the situation now. What do we do? And not like stressing out about things for hours and panicking or something like that.
Yeah, that's a really, really good approach. I mean, in life and as a professional, that's what you would expect from a professional.
Yeah.
But how did you, I mean, you said like now you're like that or mostly like that, but how did you develop that?
I think it comes more with experience. It already happened to me while I was studying that you are in the screen print workshop and you could only afford 1 meter of this fabric and something goes wrong with the print. And then you need to find a solution for that because you have like this exhibition like 2 days later or this, I don't know, you have to show these things to your teacher. And I think in the end it was always fine, you know? And I think I never made this experience that in the end it was a big disaster, you know? For example, I worked on some objects with a designer from the Netherlands and we were planning a photo shoot. So he already had some of these objects in the Netherlands and I sent some others that we made and they just got lost. The parcel is just, it's gone. It will never appear again. Yeah, so we were like, okay, now it's 3 objects less than expected, and we spend a lot of time like making them, but this is how it is. What can we do?
So during 5 years, what was your biggest struggle to date?
Yeah, I guess the biggest struggle is, of course, this time when you decide to work freelance. Yeah, to constantly make sure that you earn enough money to make a living. I think that's a big struggle. Like after I quit my side job and I decided, okay, I'm going to go for this now. In the beginning, it was pretty tough, but yeah, I'm pretty happy that I made this decision.
How did you manage to push through those hard initial months or years?
I mean, you have to become way more active because, as I said before, in my first years after I was studying, people were just like writing me emails saying like, hey, would you like to work for me or something like that? But there are times where it does not happen. So you just need to write emails saying, hey, here I am. That's me. Let me know if you want to work with me. Yeah, you have to become more active for sure.
I've always found fulfillment in self-initiated projects and personal work. This podcast being one of them, which makes me curious about how other creatives are approaching that segment of their creative output. Just by glancing at Nadine's portfolio, it becomes clear that she nurtures her personal projects, so I've asked her to expand on that.
Well, I would say I work a little bit different on commissioned jobs and on my own project. That is mainly due to the fact that I don't have that much time for the commissioned jobs. And for my own work, I don't have deadlines. I don't work seasonally. I don't know. I just work on the things whenever I feel like and when I have the time. Yeah, when I work on my own projects, they are very much based on a lot of research, on observations that I make in daily life. Yeah, mainly around our relationship to objects in general, but well, in my case, textile objects and how objects actually influence our behavior. And based on this, I create collections which are like garment collections, but also last year I made a tablecloth and napery collection. And yeah, and the commission jobs, I much more have to like communicate or react also on the people I work with. So it's different. But still what I like is when people ask me to work for them and then they say like, yeah, we want exactly what you do. Like we want exactly your research part. We want exactly that you question functionality of things and really want this approach. But of course, sometimes I also get commissions where I just work as a more or less traditional textile designers, design patterns or structures for textile.
So it sounds like a big part of your work is this personal work that you do. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. I would say a third. Yeah.
How did you came to that? There's a lot of designers or creative professionals who almost exclusively work on just like client projects, or then maybe occasionally they have here and there like a personal project to kind of explore some curiosity or something. But it seems you have it like very integral part of your almost like day-to-day or like weekly practice. How did you come to that?
I just have all these ideas in mind and I make like these observations and then I think about like collections, and for me it's really hard to not make them. And I really need to illustrate these thoughts or these observations that I make within these collections. But what I knew from the beginning is that the things that I make are not products. It's not something that you could easily just sell in a store, because that's like the freedom that I give myself when I work on my own things, is that I don't think commercial, that I just, I put like all my own money in there, so I just really do what I want. And so sometimes I make these collections and most of the things go more into museums or galleries, and sometimes there are a few things where I say like, oh, that could also work as a product. So for example, last year when I made like this napery collection, I produced some tea towels / aprons that I made because, they just work really well as a sellable product. Well, I also think it is really hard if you create, for example, your own fashion label or something. And it was never something that I really wanted to do, or like only to sell things, because my approach is way too artistic for that. And of course, when you're part of exhibitions or something, you also sometimes, not always, but sometimes you also get paid for that. But I couldn't make a living out of that for sure.
Yeah, but it sounds like you found like a really good balance.
Yeah, I mean, I could also just go on vacation with all this money that I put into these collections, but...
But why don't you pick vacation?
Yeah, because I don't know, that's just inner urge to really make these things for me. I really, it's just like that.
That's good.
And also, I think I get way more attention for my own work than for the commissions that I make. Like, I would say that based on my own collections, people ask me to work for them.
It does seem to be like a good strategy, both for like keeping your approach and yourself like fresh in your craft, but then at the same time also as a very good marketing tool to attract commissions and also to probably attract the work that you would like to be doing.
Yeah.
We've come to the very end of my conversation with Nadine. As with other guests, I've asked her to share parting pieces of advice based on what she learned so far on her professional journey.
One thing is definitely that I think it is important to keep some kind of ease within your work, that you try not to be too stressed about things. Really just take a breath in between and ask yourself, how big is this dilemma? Is it really that bad? And isn't there a solution for it? And this also leads to my second recommendation. Again, it's a German word that I could never find a real translation for it, which is Musestunden. And Muse actually means, well, it means leisure, but it also means leisure in terms of inner silence or something, that you really spend time where you do something for yourself, but maybe at the same time is exactly because of that you get inspiration. And it's really a time where you should just follow your own interests. And instead of staying in front of your desk and think about all these things, maybe there are other ways to find ideas or solutions. Yeah, that was maybe more the spiritual part.
That's perfect. I think we need both.
We need both.
In general, we need both, like the spiritual and strategic, but then also very like tactical. And
other than that, I think for me the word relevance or the term relevance is really important. I mean, the question should not that big that it would stop you from doing things. Sometimes it's also just good to do something, but I think thinking about the relevance of your work is very important.
How do you go about it? Is it like something that at the back of your mind all the time, basically? Or do you have like certain phases in a project where you're kind of trying to evaluate that?
Maybe I don't have it in the back of my mind all the time, but sometimes it happens that I sit there and I think like, what am I actually doing? And why am I doing this? I don't know. It's not there all the time. It's not that I think about the design and then I'm like, is this relevant for anyone? But yeah, maybe just sometimes I think it's good to ask that.
Hey friends, I hope you find this episode enjoyable and inspirational. I believe we touched on a lot of useful information for anybody out there interested in textile design and design in general and growth as creative professionals. I want to thank Nadine for coming onto the show. I love her enthusiasm, artistic approach and intuition, and I'm grateful for the insights she shared with me. Links to Nadine's work, as well as to some other things mentioned during our conversation, can be found in the show notes at creative.voyage/podcast. You can follow @creative.voyage on Instagram, and you can also email me directly on hello@creative.voyage. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, and until next time, my friends, take care.